Jess, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you much.
Thanks.
Well, thanks for coming this evening, everybody. We'll get started in just a minute once we get a timer issue figured out here. Good on your end, Jess?
I'm ready when you are.
Perfect. Thank you. It is the top of the hour, so I will call to order the regularly scheduled meeting of Tuesday, March 26th, 2024. Please join me for a flag salute.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
The Assembly of the City and Borough of Sitka would like to respectfully acknowledge the traditional first people of Sitka. With gratitude, we proceed on Tlingit Ani. Jess, roll call, please.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Present.
Mr. Mosier,
Here.
Mr. Pike,
Here.
Mr. Christensen,
Here.
Miss Carlson,
Here.
Mr. Saline.
Here. Thank you. Any correspondence or agenda changes this evening? Ron?
Yes. Mayor and Assembly, I'd like to acknowledge the summer tourism operations memo that was shared by our municipal administrator.
Yes, thank you. That was included in the correspondence, just some reaffirmation of some plans for summer visitation. Tonight we do have a service award for Mo McBride. I think this might be possibly the longest time I've ever seen anyone serve on a commission. 18 years. Wow. Thank you. So this service award is on behalf of the City and Borough of Sitka, is hereby awarded to Mo McBride. This expression of grateful acknowledgement for your 18 years of valued service rendered in the public interest while serving on the Employment Relations Board. Thank you. It's a happy day and a sad day at the same time, I think, because I'm sure you're happy that you now have some time back. But the historical knowledge that you bring to an employment relations board over 18 years cannot be replaced. So we do thank you for your time and your service on that. If you'd like to say something, you're welcome to, or we do have a certificate up here for you as well. So, and then just the button on the very bottom will turn that microphone red.
Mr. Mayor, thank you very much, and Assembly members, thank you for the recognition. I think all the boards that you have in the city deserve a lot of support. And I think that I was lucky enough to be involved since the inception of the Employee Relation Board with the original charter and organization of it. And I think that we did a very thoughtful job that in working with the city people at the time and also with all the employees at the time, and made a very, it was a real mutual agreement situation all the way through. We tried to constantly check on both sides, and because we were sort of independent of the assembly in some of the decision-making in order for the unions to form or not form, but we had your support at the time. Not necessarily you individuals, but this assembly support. And although I think Tor might have been involved, it really does make a difference. And I think because it's really been going so well with the unions, that it's a real testament that the good foundation that we started with really did make a difference through all of this time now. And so it's running very well. And we have two good members right now on the assembly, on the board itself, Ken Cameron, who's your representative, and then Hal Spackman, who is the one we selected to be the leader. Now that may change with the new election, who will replace me, because it's usually the two appointed people, the assembly person and the elected person, that decide who the head of it is. But I would suspect they might keep Hal there because we really have very little business right now, and we only meet when we need to. We put that in the ordinance. So instead of just meeting to meet, we meet with a purpose, which is quite helpful. And I do have all the history that once the person is elected, that I'll be giving that to them. So they have that. And I'm always just a phone call away.
Well, great. Thank you. And you know what, you said that the board is running very well right now and thoughtfully, and I would agree, because I don't ever hear about the Employment Relations Board.
Yeah.
And if
Yeah.
I heard about it a lot, that's probably not a good thing. So
Yeah, no, we
I
had a
much
change in
appreciate it. Now we got to
unions
come up and do your certificate so we
All
can
right.
smile for everybody. I hope your smile's better than mine.
Thank you.
Well, that'll bring us to special reports this evening. We do have a scheduled special report from the Sitka Community Land Trust. Randy, please, thank you.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen of the Assembly. And I'm Randy Huey, Sitka Community Land Trust. And I continue to believe that affordable housing is the greatest economic and demographic problem the community faces. And I'm sure that you see evidence of that all the time. Today, CETA's Trends article came out, publication, and it says that the average home in Sitka now is $479,818, the average home. And so, yeah. And I continue to believe that the Community Land Trust model of ownership addresses the issues, the fundamental economic issues at play. And we are able to create the initial affordability by having no land costs and a small house, and then whatever subsidies we can bring to bear. In the case of the Sault Ste. Shock neighborhood, there was $500,000 Rasmussen grant that did the site work and the utility installation, and that helps. But the real magic of the community land trust model is that it protects the affordability over time, so that by limiting profit taking at resale, so nobody makes a ton of money and the house remains affordable over time. So whatever investment the community makes in affordable housing stays there, invested. Now, the Land Trust is an organization that's moving towards sound financial footing as a nonprofit. And you probably all saw that we received $2.17 million for an apartment building from Senator Murkowski as a congressionally directed spending. And that will create housing, first of all, that's great, but it'll also create an income stream that will help sustain the work of the nonprofit, and that's great. And so in the spirit of the land having been devoted to affordable housing, those rental units will be kept at below market value. So it's another positive, it's a win for the community. Well, that money is coming through HUD and may take a year to get to us. It's glacial, I'm told. We asked for more money than we thought we would get, but we got it all. So we think that we can move from a 4-plex to a 6-plex. There are limitations that we're working on: parking, water pressure, buildable area on the ground. This is not a promise of a 6-plex. This is the statement that we're going to try to get more units there. So as a part of, in the past 2 years, we've been trying to work to move into state and federal funding that has deeper pockets. And we've been having some success. We currently have a Denali Commission grant, that's a federal entity, for $225,000 to finish some of the site work and to do the initial planning and preparation for the apartment. And we've recently received a grant from the Alaska Housing and Finance Corporation. That's another quasi-state agency that does banking things and works on affordable housing. And so because we've done the work to become what's called a community housing development organization by their definitions, we are now eligible for operational support and other grants that we can apply for. So we're trying to become that entity that has good money behind it and can continue to do work into the future. Now, the cottages at the Sault Ste. Shock community, now we have 8 complete, 2 underway. There's 4 remaining empty lots. So we have about 2 more years of work, and then we're out of lots. Because of that, we've paused taking applications from people because it gives false hope. We're keeping all the applications that we have, and we'll give those people a leg up on rentals of the apartment should that happen before we have other land to work on. It's a little hard to tell. But we just don't want to waste people's time and effort and give them false hope. We have more applications than we can deal with. So where this is leading is we're running out of land. We need more land, and we're gonna ask for your help soon. We spoke to the planning department and the planning commission about this. There are some parcels of municipal land that could be devoted to affordable housing that look, reasonably inexpensive to develop, and that might be a good use of them. We're also looking at non-municipal land. Private parties, however, expect to get paid for their land, and so that's a significant barrier. It's not impossible that we could find money to buy private land, and so we are looking at some parcels. We're also looking at some federally owned land and have some ideas. So we're doing our part to find land, and we will stand in front of you probably soon and ask that you would consider giving more municipal land to the nonprofit. So that's my brief presentation. Can I answer any questions?
I guess may have a comment that sounds like you've got good problems to have in a way.
Yeah, I think so.
A few years ago, we would have said, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, it feels good.
Thank you, Randy, for your presentation. I think this is a great thing. This is a wonderful thing. And of course, we'll talk about the municipal land thing when we get there. But I really like the land trust model, and I think it's a really wonderful thing. It would be nice too if you get some federal land too.
Wouldn't it?
Yeah. The housing, I do agree, is one of the I think probably the #1 issue in this town. People need a place to live that they can afford.
Yeah,
So,
thank you.
I appreciate you coming before us today and giving us an update on the status of the land trust.
Okay, thank you very much.
Moving on in special reports, we have Chairman Woody Woodmark here to give a government to government report.
Thank you, Mayor and Assembly members. Apologize for not being here for the past couple months. I've been on the road. So I want to give you a summary of the last 2 meetings that the tribe acted on in February and March. 21st of February and 20th of March, the council ratified a poem poll approving a letter of support to the Sea Alaska Heritage Institute on the Black Seaweed Project. Also, the tribe's been relatively busy on enrollment, so we passed numerous resolutions for the past couple months. The tribe purchased parking lots, lot located 426 and 428 Catlin Street. Authorized the submission of the priority transportation routes to the Tribal Transportation Program Inventory and Long Range Transportation Plan. The Tribal Council authorized the submission of an Indian Housing Block Grant, competitive grant application by the Baranof Island Housing Authority. The council reaffirmed selecting search representatives. Louise Brady is the alternate and yours truly is the primary representative. That was acted on in February. In March, couple things again, enrollment. And the Tribal Council authorized staff to request a government to government consultation with NOAA. And last but not least, the Tribal Council appointed Baranof Island Housing Commissioner to fill the vacancy and finish the term set to expire in 2026, and that was Rob Allen. And thank you for Gary Olson for applying also. So that's my report.
Appreciate your time tonight, Chairman.
Thank you.
Moving along in our special reports, is there anyone else here for government to government this evening? Municipal boards, commissions, or committees? Municipal departments? School district? And students and guests for special reports. Seeing none, that'll bring us to persons to be heard. This is public participation for any item off of tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes for any individual.
Good evening, Annette Evans. I'm here before you this evening to speak regarding the Blatchley Pool and pending resource proposal for Blatchley Pool. I am respectfully asking you to consider funding the pool and CBS operations in the fiscal year 2025. The timing may make this action difficult, but I feel the current situation is a disservice to the community of Sitka and our children. I am currently a full-time employee with the Sitka School District. I have also worked part-time with Parks and Recreation as a facility attendant. June 2022, I renewed my lifeguard certification with plans to help bring back more pool opportunities for the community of Sitka. Unfortunately, because Bletchley Pool sits under the school district, and because I am a full-time school district employee, I was not able to work additionally as a lifeguard. The school district found it very difficult to staff the pool, and as we know, we are still in need of a certified pool operator. Sitka is a small town and with many ambitious citizens, yet finding employees with certain certifications is a big challenge. So not being able to lifeguard with my certification was unfortunate. As a Parks and Rec employee, we discussed how wonderful it would be to offer open swims and coordinate swim lessons for youth and water aerobics for adults, in addition to the many other wonderful programs Barb Morse, and new director Kevin Knox have put into action. As you are aware, I'm sure the public is very grateful that you, as CBS, supported bringing back a community recreation program for Sitkans, so thank you. As management sits currently, the pool continues to be nearly stagnant, a resource wasting away. We are a coastal community and should have the opportunity to offer as many pool activities as possible for our children, starting as young as infancy and continuing on through the elder years. My lifeguard certification is about to expire. No one in town is licensed to train and certify lifeguards, or is unable to. Kevin Knox, as part of Parks and Rec, would like to bring someone to town, not only to certify lifeguards, but to certify someone to train lifeguards, which would be a great benefit to our small community. He has been able to do this due to the current situation at Bletchley Pool. I have concerns about safety and liability for those using the pool now and for anyone working as a lifeguard under the current Bletchley Pool operations. I hope that you will carefully consider funding the Bletchley Pool resource proposal this coming year. I would like to be able to offer my services to lifeguard to utilize the pool as a community member and to watch my children and all those of our community develop water safety skills and enjoy swim time. Thank you for your time this evening and your service to our community.
Well, good evening, Assembly. My name is Richard Wien. I strongly advise that you listen to Annette Evans. I think the Bletchley Pool is an important resource. The state saw fit to spend probably greater than $30 million on the pool across the way. And yet these are both underutilized resources, which are very important, and especially in a coastal community where kids need to learn to swim in a controlled and safe environment. Another, I'll say, picayune aspect is we spend so much money on city things. And Mo McBride, who's an absolute treasure to this community and has long served the community as an occupational therapist. When you give out a certificate, spend $3 on a frame. And I think that would definitely enhance the gift. But one important thing is, which I think is important, is I'll call it duty, honor, country. Now, those words may not mean a lot to people, but it used to be part of the mission statement of West Point. I used to go to West Point as a younger person to go to the Army Navy games. It's a beautiful part of the country, especially in autumn with the leaves, and it is incredible. Now, duty, honor, country comes from a speech by Douglas MacArthur. I asked the wolves in back of me, do they know who Douglas MacArthur is? But the bottom line is, and the thing that is very sad today, is that they took those words, duty, honor, country, out of the mission statement of West Point. And I think that's a very telling. What they replaced it with, instead of duty, honor, country, they replaced it with Army values. I'm not exactly sure what that means, but somehow duty, honor, country sounds much better. So this is, I think, the direction our country is going in, and it's a very unusual direction, but it also makes sense when we see that a recent poll showed that attendance at, for example, religious institutions and participation in religion at churches and so forth is declining. So as we lose our, in quotes, values, you can see this happening. And I just want to remind people that this is Holy Week. And I'm sure that younger people might find it difficult to tell me what Palm Sunday is, what Good Friday is, and what Easter Sunday, other than eggs, chocolate eggs. But by the way, there's hyperinflation with cocoa, which since the beginning of the year has increased 150%. So get your Cadbury eggs now. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening?
Good evening. My name is Austin Cranford. I would like to start off with, I also support Miss Evans on the pool. Kids should be able to learn, like Dr. Ween said, and we're a big fishing community. People go overboard, they need to be able to tread water and stuff like that. The reason I came up here today is I made a comment back on March 16th regarding a Supreme Court case that was resolved on March 15th, specifically Linky v. Freed. The Supreme Court held 9-0 that social media accounts and posts by public officials basically need to be open because they constitute a public forum when they are in their official capacity. In this case, official capacity is satisfied when the official had actual authority to speak on behalf of the state or locality on a particular matter, and 2, purported to exercise that authority in the relevant post. And that opinion was by Justice Amy Coney Barrett of the Supreme Court. Essentially, the reason I'm bringing this up is that the Sitka Police Department Facebook page, and I am in the process at looking at other Facebook pages and social media accounts, blocks comments from the public. As such, the Sitka Police Department is currently in violation of Link v. Freed because it's now case law. And I'm just wondering when the city is going to allow comments to be reauthorized on that social media account. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to consent agenda.
Move to approve the consent agenda consisting of item A, approve the minutes of the March 12th Assembly meeting.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the consent agenda. Is there any public comment? Jess, on the consent agenda?
Yes, on the consent agenda to approve the minutes of the March 12th Assembly meeting. Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes?
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mr. Saline,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item A.
Thank you. Item B, please.
I move to appoint Thomas Dula to an unexpired term on the Tree and Landscape Committee and Jerry Hope to an unexpired term on the Sustainability Commission.
Second.
Thanks. Apologize if I said the name wrong.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint those two names to Landscape and Sustainability Commission. Is there any public comment?
Good evening. This is Richard Ween. This is on item B, the appointment to unexpired terms for Thomas Diuva and Jerry Hope. As always, I will congratulate all those individuals who will take up the banner of community service. One of the important things about Thomas Diuva, that he's only been here 2 years, but he has been an arborist for 40 years. So that sounds like one heck of a lot of experience that he could bring to tree and landscape. So I'm glad to welcome here, in essence, to Sitka and all his experience. And Tree and Landscape is an interesting committee, and they actually do work and get their hands dirty. So they do a lot of good things. So thank you, Thomas. And Jerry Hope, where there's Jerry, there's hope. Jerry wins the prize for longevity in Sitka. He's been here 69 years, and he is just been very active in the community in many, many things. He is taking an unexpired seat on the Sustainability Commission. He has a wealth of experience, and I wish him luck on that committee. And again, thank you. And I know he's involved in lots of things, so he's a busy guy. So thank you, Mr. Hope.
Any other public comment on the appointments? Assembly deliberation? Jess?
Yes, on the motion to appoint Thomas Duva to an expired term on the Tree and Landscape Committee and Jerry Hope to an expired term on the Sustainability Commission. Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Saline?
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item B.
Item C, please.
I move to reappoint Joan Brady Howard to a 3-year term on the Historic Preservation Commission under category of Sitka Tribe of Alaska representative.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to reappoint. Is there any public comment?
Good evening, this is Richard Ween. This has to do with Dion Brady Howard, and who is re-upping for the Historic Preservation Committee. Dion Brady Howard comes from a storied family here in Sitka, very involved in Native community and cultural events, and has really been a shining light in many different aspects within this community. She used to be a teacher at Mount Edgecombe High School, and I believe is currently at Outer Coast, teaching cultural effects, including language. And so she is a real resource and a gift. I have obviously the opportunity to have known the family, and especially her grandmother, Isabella Brady, who was words can't express what an incredible woman that Isabella was. So Dion Brady Howard, thank you very much for your service. And 3 years is a long time to be on historic preservation, but it's a good thing, and you know all about it. Thank you.
Any other public comment on the reappointment? Assembly deliberation? Jess?
Yes, on the motion to reappoint Dion Brady Howard to a 3-year term on the Historic Preservation Commission under the category of Sitka Tribe of Alaska representative. Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Saline?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Mosier?
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item C.
Thank you. Item unfinished business, item D, please.
I move to approve ordinance 2024-06 on second and final reading, making supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2024 Thompson Harbor Lift Station.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-06. Is there any public comment?
Good evening. This is Richard Ween talking about the supplemental appropriation for the Thompson Harbor Lift Station. I think that it is something that clearly needs to be done. This is, and everybody needs a reminder what this is all about. The lift station takes waste from this side of the city and brings it over so it can get processed on Japonski Island. And so clearly this fits in with the very important one of 3 needs that this city is supposed to fill for its citizens. In 2022, there was a $1.3 million supplementation for a loan from the Alaska Environmental Conservation Department. And, but it turns out that in 2023, that was not enough money. We all know about the notion of inflation. And so the cost now increased to $2.8 million. And so what is needed tonight is the approval of $1.7 million from the ADEC for the completion of clearly this necessary problem. This is a loan, by the way, and loans come with interest, even though they may be loans, but that means you have to pay off the principal and you have to pay interest, and these become additive over time. And every time we take one of these loans, it's additive, no matter how important. And again, it's important to keep track of how many loans we have and what the overall costs are. And one of the things I would have liked to have seen in the memo was the interest costs per year, as well as the total costs of this loan over the lifespan of the loan. Just as a citizen, I like to have that information. When I walk into a store, I kind of say, well, how much is this? And you are acting in our behalf. As necessary as it is, the people from Sitka needs to know, what the total is, because eventually the piper has to be paid. So again, this is needed. It's important. You need to pass it. But again, it's another loan. Thank you.
Any other public comment on 24-06? Assembly deliberation? Jess?
Yes, on the motion to approve ordinance 2024-06 on second and final reading, making the supplemental appropriations for fiscal year 2024 on the Thompson Harbor Lift Station. Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeiß,
Yes.
Mr. Saline,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
motion passes 6-0 on item E.
Thank you. That'll bring us to new business item E.
I move to approve ordinance 2024-07 on first reading, amending Title IV Revenue and Finance of the Sitka General Code by updating Chapter 4.85 Driver Facility Charge.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve ordinance 24-07. Is there any public comment? Actually, Ron, you have a introduction for this one?
I do. Yeah, I'm gonna ask Joseph Bea, our airport manager, to come up, and while he's on his way up, I'll give him a quick introduction. Joseph's been with us for about a handful of months or so and comes with lots of experience, and he's doing some great work out at the airport, getting things rolling with the project out there. So hand it to you.
Welcome. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Joseph Baez. I am the airport terminal manager. Thank you for the time, Mayor and Assembly. My request tonight is to increase the driver facility charge from 4 to 8%. These funds will continue to be placed in the airport terminal fund and be used for maintenance and operations of the airport terminal. As the size of the terminal building doubles, the cost of maintaining and operating the terminal building will increase. By getting ahead of the curve and increasing the driver facility charge rental car companies pay, we can source revenue from travelers based outside of Sitka, minimizing the burden on locals. This increase is an important part of our strategy to ensure the terminal is self-sufficient, collecting revenues from airport users and ensuring operations of the terminal do not require a subsidy from the general fund. To address some of the questions that I anticipated, concessions for rental cars and the increase to driver facility charge combined, I want to point out that the master airport lease between CBS and the state does not mandate concession fees for car rental companies. Car rentals will not be paying concession fees on top of a rate increase to the driver facility charge. Also, the way that 4.85 is currently written, all car rentals in Sitka are paying to fund the airport. I'd like to point out that most individuals renting a car in Sitka will be flying into the airport and arriving through the terminal building. Cruise ship passengers are not in town for very long and are primarily bussed down from the cruise ship dock, and ferry passengers are usually traveling with their vehicles. 2 of the 5 car rental companies operating in Sitka are currently paying the driver facility charge, both of which are operating from the airport. Individuals who are traveling into Sitka and renting a vehicle are an airport user group who is more able to absorb a cost increase, which is in line with rates paid in Juneau. CBS will need to decide who to source operating funds from, and I will recommend that we source these funds from airport users when possible. And finally, a little bit outside of 4.85, raising the lease rates at the airport. This will affect the current car rental company there. The FAA mandates that the airport prioritize aeronautical use. This means that the rate the airline pay per square foot will become the baseline that we use to determine the other tenants at the airport. To ensure that the businesses operating from the airport terminal are paying a fair price to use the space, we'll be implementing a standard CPI adjustment to this baseline rate. Alaska Airlines their previous sublease with the city was signed in 2012 and is in the process of being renewed currently. This is about 12 years ago without a CPI adjustment, despite the inflation that occurred during this time. We have no intention of going back and trying to make up this lost revenue. The rates moving forward will be a standard increase to the value of the space, adjusted for inflation and for compliance with FAA regulations.
Thank you for your overview on that. If we have further questions, we'll call you back up.
Thank you.
Is there any public comment on item 24-07?
Good evening. My name is Austin Cranford. I wanted to speak on this because while the airport manager did mention a couple of things, specifically that the driver facility charge does not apply only to the airport, it applies to rental sales of motorized passenger vehicles made in the city and borough at the rate of 8%. So that's everybody within the city and borough, not just the airport. But he mentioned that they will not pay both this charge and the terminal fees, but it says in risk assessment in the city's own memo that existing car rental companies operating from within the airport terminal will collect required concession fees mandated by the prime lease between the Alaska Department of Transportation and CBS, which will be in addition to the proposed increase of the driver facility charge. So what we have here is the city lying by omission and proceeding to tax citizens, non-citizens, because it specifically mentions again in the memo, we expect that the number of local citizens affected by this will be marginal, however, will not be zero. So the city admits that it will affect local citizens as well. And all this is, it's another tax, be it own citizens, outside of citizens, and it's applying to several companies. Apparently, we had a public member that received a letter from the city requesting 3 years of back taxes because the city wasn't keeping up on this tax to begin with. So we want to increase the tax for the airport terminal, but what's going on there? Anyway, it's an increased tax. It's against both the citizens and non-citizens. The city both claims that they want tourism, but then it's charging tourists more. The more you charge tourists, the more they're going to go other places. And then at the end of the day, it's just a tax on the regular citizens. So thank you.
Well, good evening. My name is Richard Ween. I'd like to welcome Joseph Vance as the airport. I think he has a great radio voice. Maybe he can be the voice of the Sitka Wolves during basketball or baseball season, since we no longer have Problem Corner. But again, welcome. This is an increase from 4 to 8%, and I'm sure the mathematicians here will say that that's a 100% increase. And you know, it's just the price of doing business. We have to figure a revenue stream in order to pay for airport. And when you compare this to something like SeaTac, this is pretty pussycat as far as the amount of money. According to their notion is that it will increase the fees, meaning at 4%, we currently receive $70,000 a year to $150,000 a year. So that will increase by $70,000. And I have a feeling at the end of the day, that's not going to be much. But I always look for lessons in things, and that you want money, the assembly, which is the governing body of the city, can increase a tax to get money. And it's the same thing that can be done, for example, with tourists. So if the assembly has a will, they can raise the revenues, which can help pay for the goods and services that all these individuals use. So like Dorothy and the Wizard of Oz, you have the power. And I may have to purchase red slippers for all of you. But the truth is, you can raise the money if you have the will. And 4 to 8, not bad, but we'll see what'll happen. And again, welcome, Joseph Vance. Good luck.
Any other comments on ordinance 24-07? Back to the assembly for deliberation. Tor?
Yeah. Well, we knew this was coming when we were talking about the lease. When we got that lease, trying to say how to say this politely, when we were encouraged to do the lease or lose the airport, we knew we were going to have to do this. And this is one of the things they mentioned. You know, at least the funds will be used for the people who are paying it, which is, you can't say for all taxes like that. I know that, I think the one in Seattle funded the new Seahawks thing. So, yeah, it's, I think, a fact of life, and we would be remiss not doing this. And it'll take a, you know, it doesn't necessarily fix the problems we're going to have funding the new airport, but takes a bite out of it. So, necessary evil.
Like to have a little bit of discussion on when this will start. In the ordinance, it doesn't say, and so there it is, just when it gets voted on by the assembly. Perhaps we could think of some sort of like start date, because this is intended to be a pass-through charge to the consumer. Maybe give those local companies a little bit of time to contact their existing reservations and let them know that the rate will be increasing. Could be something that would benefit our local business people. I don't know if I'm ready to support an addendum right now, but I'm thinking of that. But I do intend to vote for it this evening.
Yes, and we've done a similar thing where the effective date was instantly, and charter providers had a concern that they've already been booked, everything's already been paid for. So I understand your concern, and the precedent has been set in the past of extending the date, the effective date, in order to allow people to contact. So I think that could be reaching out to, you know, there's only a couple car rental companies in town. So I think we could reach out and see how that could affect them. Kevin?
So question for Ron. So I take it you and Joseph have kind of talked to the companies that are going to be affected? Just to give them a heads up at least.
So Joseph, do you want to? So we're actively reworking all of our subleases right now. We're trying to hit a goal of July 1st to be active on all of our subleases. This is part of that, preparing for the new lease to come into effect on July 1st. So
Okay, the reason why I ask is obviously I'll support this, but it's nice when you're making changes to talk to the people being affected and not just telling them, but having a conversation, letting him know.
Yeah, and I too share the same concern that JJ and the mayor expressed about the timeliness of this. I think we could implement some strategy to improve that.
That is correct. I have not currently reached out to Alaska Rent-A-Car operating as Avis. We are still trying to make sure that everything, their lease rates, the fees, the concession fees, we want to make sure that we have a firm handle on things before we start throwing things out there that might be red herrings, and that we have a full grasp and understanding. I'd like to apologize. When writing the risk assessment, I put in there that they would also be paying the concession fees, because when I read the master lease between CBS and the state, I saw the 5% on goods as goods and services. So that is my mistake. Car rentals will not be paying that 5% because that is just on goods like t-shirts, physical objects. So I apologize for that confusion. Also, I'd like to say that the local citizens are going to be affected by this, in that the individuals here in Sitka who are renting a car will have this pass-through expense. There is going to be a small increase to the price when they go and rent a car. The individuals who are renting their cars on Turo, they are most likely not going to be paying this pass-through expense. They are not going to be paying the driver facility charge. The amount of resources that Sitka would have to expend in going after each one of these singular vendors who are using their cars and renting them on Turo, that's going to most likely cost the city more than the revenue we would take in from that. So it doesn't sound financially prudent to go that avenue for the city to me. So I think the actual tax on local citizens was going to be pretty marginal.
Along that same lines, so if an individual owns a car rental company that does not utilize the airport at all, they're still going to be paying this fee, correct?
As the code is written, as 4.85, formerly 4.17 is written, yes, that is what the ordinance says. However, the only companies that are complying with that, who are paying into the driver facility charge, are at the terminal currently. It's up to the city how we would like to pursue compliance. For the individuals who are utilizing the terminal facility, I think it's entirely appropriate to ask these companies to pay the driver facility charge. For the companies that are not at the terminal, I don't know if asking them to pay to fund the airport is appropriate.
Yes, and I would agree with that. And I think that was for the assembly's purpose. That was a reason for my questioning. I am aware of an individual who's interested in starting a car rental company in town that would not utilize the airport. And I don't think it's fair to charge that individual a driver facility fee when they're not using the facility fee that's paid for. So that's a separate conversation on if we want to change code, but I may be bringing something forward with a co-sponsor to that effect. Any other questions for Joseph while he's up here? Thank you for your time again.
Thank you very much.
Further deliberation from the assembly? Jess?
Yes, on the motion to approve ordinance 2024-07 on first reading, amending Title IV Revenue Finance of the Sitka General Code by updating Chapter 4.85 Driver Facility Charge. Ms. Carlson?
Yes.
Mr. Christensen?
Yes.
Mr. Pike?
Yes.
Mr. Mosher?
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis?
Yes.
Mr. Saling?
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on first reading.
Thank you. It is a little bit before the hour, but I anticipate this next item taking a little bit of time. So we'll go ahead and take our brief recess now. Be seated when you're ready to continue. All right, thank you, Assembly. So that'll bring us to item F on our agenda, additional new business items, resolution 24-09.
I move to approve resolution 2024-09 on first and final reading, authorizing the municipal administrator to apply for the Denali Commission grant in the amount of $510,251.50 under the Infrastructure Fund Program, area of use as leverage to future grant opportunities for the Gary Paxton Industrial Park GPIP North Boat Yard Electrical Project.
Second.
That's been moved and seconded to approve resolution 24-09. Ron, I understand Melissa and Gary are here to present,
That's correct.
and I'm sure they'll explain to us why that 50 cents was very important as well.
Melissa Wildman, Public and Government Relations Director.
Hi, I'm Gary White with SIC Economic Development Association and GPIP.
The 50 cents is halvesies. We had no other choice.
Would you guys like me to just give a brief rundown here?
Yes, please. If you could give a brief introduction to the resolution, and if we have further questions, we'll call you back up.
Sure. So, you know, the haul out project is moving along good, but we've always known that we've been undercapitalized. Currently on our phase one development, we're about 5.8 million short. And so there's probably going to be some questions of why we didn't look to get money for that to continue to work for the waterfront development. But what we're trying to do is keep each project separate. The waterfront development is being funded with local funds, and that has a different regulatory environment that if we put federal funds into it, if we put federal funds towards the waterfront development, that makes the entire waterfront development federalized and has to follow a whole set of different regulations, which increases cost and time to get it done. Excuse me. So we started looking outside of the box of what isn't involved in phase one or phase two. And we've heard a lot of comments from folks at the Gary Paxton Industrial Park Board that nowhere in any of our phases is there electrical work to have power supply for boats, other than boats bringing in their own gen sets, which will work in the short term, but everybody would like to have this. And so we have a grant opportunity with the Denali Commission, but the Denali Commission grants also have matching fund requirements. And since we don't have any matching funds and we want to take every single matching fund we can to put it towards that 5.8 deficit that we have, we kind of talked to Denali Commission and strategically worked with them what would give us our best success rate. And then we worked with the EDA that has another grant that's a federal grant that we can use the Denali grant for matching funds to go for this EDA grant. And so we went out and got a quote from Morris Engineering that does electrical work here. And this is the quote that he had for the $1 million+ and cents, blah, blah, blah. I mean, I'd be happy to round it up, but we're just taking the quote we have. We're saying 50% we'd like to put towards go after this Denali Commission grant. And then if we're successful, then we'll come back. We imagine last year it was about July timeframe when we understood that we were awarded the grant. Then we can go apply for the EDA grant. That's a rolling grant. It does not have a deadline. And I talked to the folks at EDA and there's still funding left, and they expect to get recapitalized by the federal government this next whatever funding cycle the government has. So that's kind of the deal. And this would help us get some electrical infrastructure in ground, and that would be nice to have as we start developing the yard. So that's the brief overview.
Appreciate that. If we have further questions, we'll call you back up. Is there any public comment on resolution 24-09?
Good evening. This is Richard Weem. As you know, this is for permission to apply for what was mentioned as a leverage grant of 500,000 and change. The reason it's a leverage grant is because it represents the 50% of the grant of a further grant, which is from the Public Works and Economic Adjustment Assistance Grant which would round it to the $1 million. And so this is important to get. Clearly, while money is being printed in Washington at $1 trillion every 100 days of debt, I think it's important we need to get up there and get anything we can. I think if you read the memo, which I thought was very good, it shows the amount of money shortfalls that are there and what the challenges for the future will be. So this is clearly a very good idea. Now, the electrical project is more than just the north part, which is what this grant is for. There's also a south and a west part, which has a total cost of more than $3 million and 27 cents. I don't know where they get these rounding numbers, but this is something very important to do. And in looking to the future and the amounts of cash they're going to need, I think they need to get on the hustle because I think those funds have the potential to become way harder to get in the future, and costs due to inflation will increase. So I wish them very good luck and keep these things coming, because the gravy train has the potential to end fairly soon. Thank you.
Any other comments on resolution 24-09? Back to the assembly for deliberation. Scott?
Didn't we, I guess I got to get up to speed on it. Didn't we just repurchase a building that Salmon Shares put a bunch of amps in so they could freeze fish out there? Wasn't there a building that we just bought that people were upset about that we paid? So I'm like confused as to how many amps do you need to work on boats out there as well? Like, I'm just like.
So if my understanding is correct, and Gary, come correct me if I'm wrong, but this is, yes, there was a transformer on that property, but this is more of the power out, the spurs out to individual slips where people would have their boats so they can plug a welder directly in, as opposed to having to use a generator, or they can plug their grinders in or anything like that right at their leased space, as opposed to just a centralized.
So they're talking about transmission lines because we already got enough amps there, right?
I don't know if there's enough. I'd hate to
Well,
say
that's what's not
that.
working out with me as far as we're gonna freeze fish requires buku amps. Now we're gonna run welders for 1B. It's not the same thing. So they're looking for transmission lines to get to the north and west.
Correct.
But they didn't say that. They just said, so I got it now. Thank you.
Sure.
I just appreciate the work being done to go out and find money for different projects like this. And I know that when we started this whole process, I had the feeling that this was going to be popular among granting agencies. I mean, this is the kind of thing that, economic development, putting, that is popular, that is the kind of thing that everybody from private funding opportunities to Fed to state like doing. And so I'm happy to see them going after that. I mean, it's the kind of thing where an organization can, this is not particularly fair to the Denali Commission because but the Denali Commission can now say, hey, we built the industrial park for we built this fallout, even though they just did a small amount of it. And the more parents something like this have, the more, we have people looking over it. And I'm sure that, down the road, we'll probably be asking for them for some more, but now they're a parent. And so, when your kid wants you to, so I appreciate them going after this, and I enthusiastically will support it.
JJ?
Couple of questions for you guys, if you want to come up. So this is for the first part, for the north section, the first half. If we do get this money from Denali Commission, but we don't get the second piece from EDA, what's the backup plan there? Because I don't I wouldn't want to see us needing to, quickly do a supplemental appropriation to secure that first half.
So, yeah, if we do get the Denali grant and we do not get the EDA grant, we have the ability to back out of the Denali Commission grant. And I've spoke to them about that this is kind of the first step and the second step, and we fully intend to apply for the EDA grant. But yeah, if not, then it's a discussion. I don't want to put anybody on the hook for funds that we don't have, especially when we have a really big need to get boats out of the water.
But I've got a couple other thoughts of being able to go after funding too. There's a small shipyard program, so that could be something that we look at.
And there's also DOE opportunities as well. This one seemed to be the most readily available, and the beauty of this one is that no deadline, right? So we don't have to worry about, okay, we're going to miss our opportunity to apply for this grant because the deadline's in May and we don't know if we're getting the money until July.
So that was the worst case scenario. On the best case scenario, would this opportunity be available kind of annually to fund the South and the West as well?
It's a possibility. The Denali Commission is funding every year, and hopefully they're getting more and more with the help from our delegation. So that's the plan.
Yeah, thank you for finding these opportunities and for working out the kind of procurement schedule here.
Sure. I'd just like to add that, I initially wanted to go after the full 1.5, right? But being strategic and working with the Denali Commission and trying to find a way to be successful, knowing that they only have so much money to give to each community, and each community, if more money comes into the community, there's other entities in the city going after grants and that have a good chance of being successful. So this was a very strategic conversation with them for this amount.
Any other questions for Gary or Melissa while they're up here? Gary doesn't want to answer any more questions. He's running away. Just wanted to say thank you for looking for a source of funding that can actually be used as match. I know in the granting world that's very rare. So that's a massive opportunity here. And I also appreciate the fact that if we are awarded the first half and not the second half, that the assembly isn't then tied in to continuing the project, whether or not the funding's available. That's very important to me as well. Not saying that we wouldn't help, that's a future conversation, but saying that our hands aren't tied for this application is huge to me. So I appreciate both of those items on this, and am excited to go forward with it. Anything further from the assembly? Jess?
Yes, on the motion to approve Resolution 2024-09 on first and final reading, authorizing the municipal administrator to apply for the Denali Commission grant in the amount of $510,251.50 under the Infrastructure Fund Program area to use as leverage for future grant opportunities for the Gary Paxton Industrial Park North Boat Yard Electrical Project. Mr. Mosier,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Mr. Saline,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item F.
Thank you. Our next item tonight is approving the Sustainability Commission 2024-25 goals and work plan. We have the chair and vice chair here tonight to present to us, give us an overview of the last year's activities and then the coming up year's activities. So thank you for joining us this evening and welcome.
Good evening.
I'd like to have their presentation before we have a motion on this item.
Bear with me just a second while I pull that up. Does anyone have a good joke about eating elephants? Perhaps Assembly Member Pike. We've taken a couple bites. I'm glad to report.
Poaching elephants is not funny.
Got a couple more bites to go. And they're really sustainable. So yeah, they're great food security.
More sustainable
Keeps you
than a black
working.
rhino. And if you need some time, we're able to take a recess as well.
I should be able to. pull this right up. And if not, happy to give it without it. We had a short presentation prepared, but essentially the bulk of it is the same. So we will do it without. But hello, my name is Katie Riley. I'm the chair of the Local Sustainability Commission, and thanks so much for having us tonight. With me is Aurora Taylor, our vice chair. And since there is at least one new face on the body since the commission was created, I just want to share a little bit of context about where we are, how we got here, and then go into a little bit of what we've done over the past year and where we're headed next. So Sitka's municipal and climate action has had a pretty long history, starting around 2008 with the first Climate Action Task Force and the creation of a climate action plan. But really the city devoted some solid efforts to a sustained approach starting in 2019 with some resolutions declaring y'all's resolve to address the climate emergency, establish a climate action task force, and to decarbonize city operations. So the current Permanent Sustainability Commission that was created was established in 2022. And I believe that was also the year that the city hired a sustainability coordinator in Bree Gable. So as the commission, we're a set of volunteers. We have diverse perspectives, careers, and interest areas, and we share a collective care for the sustainability of our community and also a desire to help the city achieve the goals that you all have set for it. So we want to add capacity, whether this is by doing research, identifying those funding opportunities that can help us, bring extra money into the community, or figuring out how to help community members get involved and move their ideas forward. We're definitely not the only ones taking on these challenges right now. And so we're really fortunate to draw from a very broad network of expertise and experience. So the commission, I just wanted to clarify kind of like our role. There's a ton of organizations and citizens in Sitka that care about climate and sustainability issues. We're really lucky to have such a engaged populace, but our scope as a municipal commission, it's a little less flexible than a nonprofit or a citizens initiative with the rules that we operate under. They're the same rules that you all operate under, so I'm sure you're familiar with them, but the Open Meetings Act, the Robert's Rules of Order, things like that. So a little less flexible of a framework, but we were created by city ordinance and appointed by assembly members such as yourselves with the specific roles of working with city staff to do public outreach, to understand community priorities, and as well acting as an advisory body on approaches and actions that you can support to take action on the 9 topics that we cover, which is everything from like reducing our supply chain fragility to reducing the use of fossil fuels, addressing solid waste, all of those different things. So our approach as a municipal commission is not necessarily easier than working through some of these other avenues, but we're doing it because we're really invested in helping, and supporting the city of Sitka to be a leader in sustainability and climate action, and also for rural communities kind of across the nation as they take on these challenges. We think we have a good opportunity here. So in that vein, in 2023, we made some advisory recommendations to the Assembly in regards to creating a community garden. That was a citizens initiative proposal brought forward that we supported. And then we also supported a recommendation that the city fund a heat pump assessor position via Alaska Heat Smart. And that would expand access to information about what kind of heat pumps you need for your homes here in Sitka, and also create access to some funding opportunities through their Clean Heat Incentive Program. So over the past year, heat pumps have kind of been a focus area of ours. They're a great way to reduce carbon footprint, save money through space heating solutions for residences and businesses. There are federal tax credits available. There's a lot of like local or regional incentives. We have some great loan products offered by True North and Tongass Federal Credit Union. So just helping people take advantage of those and bring together the parties that are working on, expanding access to heat pumps in Sitka has been a focus area for us to look how we can support and partner with folks in this endeavor. And so Alaska Heat Smart is a great partner there. They are super committed to this and are bringing a lot of administrative capacity and funding to Sitka in that regard.
as we introduced these goals last year, we talked about elephants and eating them, and happy to report we're on our way. We have taken a couple bites out, and we're going to report on some of the progress that we made there last year and how we're going to continue working on these similar goals, kind of some of them in a different approach this next year. But in regards to our first goal, which was the creation of the community renewable energy strategy, the City of Sitka has received numerous forms of support from the Department of Energy over the past couple of years that we're really grateful for. And those have looked at everything from like other forms of energy generation around Sitka to how to get our broader community more engaged and informed about where our energy comes from and how it can be used, and also what kinds of workforce are needed for the future to maintain the viability of our systems. And I know that this is like top of mind for our electric department, and probably all of you, is making sure that we have the folks in town that are able to ensure that we have that reliable supply of renewable electricity. So the reason that we expanded Blue Lake was so that we could have this reliable supply for current and future economic activity. And we really want to be helping our citizens and businesses take advantage of those benefits so that they can help the longevity of that investment and our overall community sustainability. So that's where things like energy conservation measures come in, and making sure that we all have like the most up-to-date technology so that that resource lasts as long as it can. So last year, we were accepted to the second round of the Department of Energy's Energy Transitions Initiative Partnership Project. Federal government, they love acronyms. This one is known as ETIP, but the technical team there is great. They've been helping us create a community renewable energy strategy, and we're really grateful for their technical expertise. And so you might ask, why do we need a community renewable energy strategy when we have 100% renewable energy in the form of our lovely hydropower dams out there? But there's really two reasons. The first one being we have a lot of boats, cars, and also heating in town that is currently powered by fossil fuels. So we need to really look at like, what does that look like to transition our transportation, our heating to renewable resources if we want to have that aim for our community, which we have stated that we do. And then the second is, one of the more exciting things is that we are a municipal owned utility. So that means that we actually have a lot of power and say as citizens of Sitka over our utility in a way that other communities that are served by, cooperatives or for-profit entities don't. And so, this is like really a collective responsibility of ours to steward these resources and to pursue this goal of decarbonization. I think that that means that we all have to work together as a community to pursue those goals. And that means creating a shared vision and a shared understanding of our energy future. And that is what this renewable energy strategy is all about. So we're here to look at and answer questions like, what do we want our energy to be used for? How much energy do we need? How do we get young Sitkans interested and excited about jobs in the renewable energy sector and staying in this community or coming back here to put their skills to work? So throughout this process, one of our big emphasis is education and information, and we want to make sure that the citizens of Sitka have the best information and are equipped to be able to make decisions or advocate for how we use and generate and conserve our energy with that aim of really keeping it as affordable and reliable as possible. And so we're going to be starting an educational series on these topics soon. This is going to cover things like, how our electric grid works, how energy is used in town, where it goes, local energy economics, and breaking down your electric bill. I know y'all get a lot of flack for those electric bills, but we really do have some of the better rates in Alaska. So we want to communicate, what that all means when you're looking at your electric bill and you're seeing where the money's going, like why is that? How do those rates compare throughout Alaska? And how do we keep them low for our community? And really aimed at increasing understanding and then participation from folks in the community to design our future together. That shouldn't be something that just relies here in this body. It should be something that is shared by all the citizens of Sitka. So lots of work on the energy front, and that has definitely been our focus over the past year. But we did get conversation started on our second goal, which was to analyze opportunities for solid waste diversion. And we actually changed this goal a little bit upon collaborating with city staff. So I'd love to give a shout out to Public Works Director Ron Vinson here. We wanted to look at, policy levers and actions to increase waste diversion, and really the effort is to let's bring in less waste that we don't need. Let's export less. Like, what can we earn money on through recycling or divert, that's food waste that can go towards compost production here. But the approach that we decided to take, and probably the only thing the slides would have been useful for, is the asset management approach that Mr. Vincent came up with. And so he approached our working group in January for a discussion on how we could use this process to really analyze our waste streams and how the city manages solid waste, and do that in a collaborative manner with staff. That's something that previously I think has only happened between city staff. And so bringing in the Sustainability Commission to offer some different perspectives and bring some different ideas up was new, and we really commend the department for taking that approach and bringing us in. So we're in the starting phases here, but our overall goals, really stabilize or decrease the waste rates that we're dealing with and achieve outcomes in terms of, sustainability of resources, environmental outcomes, training, like job operations, and all of the other co-benefits that can come with, there's you can generate energy from waste, or you can create some new economic opportunities for how we use that. So we want to really look at the broad scheme of things and analyze what kind of opportunities are available to us as a community. So we're going to be working with city staff to give input at this policy level. Is kind of like the first level of the asset resource management creation plan, helping understand the problems or the challenges that are involved in dealing with our solid waste, so that we can come up with some guiding principles for how we want to address that, like the things that are important to us as a Sustainability Commission, and combining those with what's important to staff. And again, the focus of ours are definitely on sustainability and lowering our greenhouse gas emissions, making sure that we're trying to utilize the full life cycle of the product, but also with an eye to affordability and the sustainability of our town and people to really be able to live here and stay in this community for the long term. That's definitely top of mind for all of us. So we look forward to diving in more on that this year and having a little bit more time. And then the third goal was around electric vehicles, infrastructure plan. And this goal also shifted a bit after discussions with city staff and other municipalities that have engaged in this. So rather than developing a really, concrete plan about procurement policies and procedures and when we need to replace vehicles, the city assembly really gave staff the direction when y'all passed the resolution to decarbonize city operations, including transportation. So we are working with city staff after talking about that and saying that instruction was clear enough about where the assembly wants us to go to compel these purchases of EVs. So there was some great discussions at the table, and that ended in the purchase of the city's first EV. So congratulations, and thank you all so much for helping shepherd that along. That was a janitorial van. And Bree also, during that same time period, put together a comparison of the electric Ford Lightning truck and the normal F-150. And I encourage anyone that is listening or on this body to check out that comparison. It's on the Sustainability Commission website and gives a really great cost benefit analysis. It's based on the city's numbers, but compares a lot of the specs for those trucks and is super helpful. So we're going to move ahead in the next year by gathering feedback on that van, how it's working, what's needed, what are the concerns there, and identifying those next candidates for conversion within the municipal fleet. And also, we're looking at a few different ideas for how to use the energy efficiency and conservation block grant funding. And I believe that we will be making a recommendation at our next meeting, which is on April 1st. And I think that will come to your table for how to expend those funds. And one of the options is to purchase electric vehicles or electric vehicle charging infrastructure. Just one thing I wanted to flag as you're thinking about the budget and entering into those negotiations is that EVs, charging infrastructure, and other energy efficient electric infrastructure, these items can have higher upfront costs. And you know, the cost savings usually work out. Sometimes they don't for some of those really big items like boilers for massive buildings or whatnot, but there really needs to be a cost benefit analysis that includes this sustainability lens and considers the resolutions and the goals that the city has set for itself when you're discussing these infrastructure investments and capital projects. And I would, you know, it'd be wise to take these increased upfront costs into your budget conversations and planning so that you're not having to make those supplemental appropriations that I know are a bit of a higher lift. So little higher upfront costs, but really the payoff over time is definitely worth it. That's money that's going back into our municipal utility, you know, back into the city coffers and supports the overall goals that the assembly has made. So with these goals, we'll be starting on the other half of the elephant this year. I'll be happy to report on our progress next March. And I would just like to say thank you so much to all of you for your support. Very much appreciate you appointing Mr. Jerry Hope to the commission. Very excited to work with him. He brings a ton of knowledge and expertise, and we do have another spot open. So if there's anyone in the community that's listening that wants to get involved, please reach out to our sustainability coordinator. The commission meets monthly, each Monday at 6 p.m. Our next meeting is the 1st of April. And then also just a big thank you to all of the city staff. Like, we've developed a lot of collaborative working relationships with the staff that are, you know, really making this happen where the rubber meets the road. And so I just wanted to give a shout out to those who are helping shepherd this along, from Bree to Amy, Ron, Mike Schmetzer, Mike Stenberg, John Leach, all of the above. And happy to take any questions or hear any feedback that you all might have.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Any questions on the presentation for the chair and vice chair? I have a lot of questions for the vice chair since she spoke so much during that presentation.
Basically a wealth of knowledge. So
I do have one question before I get into some deliberations later. And that is regarding goal 3, you know, supporting the electrification of the municipal fleet. It seems to me that manufacturer support for electric vehicles is starting to wane. It is not as hard charging as it was perhaps a year ago. Do you think that that is going to affect the implementation of item 3, and how are you going to navigate that as we go forward?
So the city is a institutional partner, I believe, with Ford, which is great because they came out with one of the first like most used vehicles in America that was an electric option for the electric truck. There are electric trucks on lots throughout Alaska that are able to be purchased. So one of the things that I believe was of consideration when those first started coming out was that there wasn't enough, and they had like sign up lists and you had to get in line. And so now there are enough that are in circulation. I think that like production has dropped off to meet the demand that currently exists. I don't see us going backwards in terms of like the progress that has been made on electric vehicles, even with a slowdown in production. I think the trends have been set that we're adopting these vehicles, we're adopting, you know, renewable energy technology, and we will continue as such. So I don't anticipate that that will very much change our plans. Electric vehicles are still a great option, especially for a community with 14 miles of road in Southeast Alaska, where you can really get everywhere you need to go without range anxiety. So I don't think those broader market trends will impact our community's ability to transition, but definitely something to keep an eye on.
Great, thank you. Any other questions? Please.
I just want to thank you. You said a lot of information in a very short period of time. I know you could have talked, well, you could have talked for a while and gotten more into the details, but I just want to say thank you so much for the presentation. Thank you for all the work that you're doing. The liaison for the Sustainability Commission, it's been a pleasure to watch them grow and learn, and from no commission at all to a fully functioning. And I think that you guys, I'm really pleased that you're working with city staff. I'm really pleased that city staff is working with you. That's exactly what, you know, the kind of thing that I think we all want here. So keep it up. Good job.
Thank you. And of course, a special shout out for Assemblymember Mosher for being our diligent liaison. We do appreciate all of your time.
Second.
Great, thank you. If we do have any further questions during our deliberation, we'll be sure to call you up. Jess, do we need a minute on the recording? I just want to make sure that we're within the bounds you need. Okay, are we still being audio recorded? That system is still working? Great, thank you. At this point, I would entertain a motion and then we'll have some public comment on the sustainability goals.
I move to approve the Sustainability Commission's 2024-2025 goals and work plan.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the Sustainability Commission's 2024-25 goals and work plan. Is there any public comment?
Good evening. My name is Austin Cranford. I wanted to congratulate the Sustainability Commission on the work that they're doing, but I did notice a couple of things while I was listening that piqued my interest because I do keep track of the news. So during the F-150 Lightning versus the F-150 conversation that was just had, I remember reading about January, December, and I looked it up. I have 4 articles right here that Ford was having issues. Specifically, we have Axios on January 19th, why Ford, GM, and others are pulling back. Hertz also sold their electrical car fleet. CNN 1 month ago, Ford stopped shipping F-150 Lightning electric pickups. The New York Times in December 12th of 2023, Ford will cut planned electric F-150 production as demand slows. And then Fortune 1 month ago, Ford's EV push slows as F-150 Lightning shipments halted over quality issues. That was one of my concerns. And my second concern is if we are electrifying the fleet, specifically emergency vehicles, fire truck, police, vehicles of that nature. We do live in a active volcanic zone now as of the Alaska Volcano Observatory. We live in a tsunami zone and we live in a landslide zone. If the power for whatever reason is knocked out, are we not going to be able to use our electrical emergency vehicles or the electrical fleet? But those were just some of the concerns that I wanted to bring up. Thank you.
Good evening. This is Richard Ween. I'd like to thank the Sustainability Commission for, I'll say, continuing the conversation. Certainly when we have to deal with solid waste management, that conversation has been going on for decades. And one of the big things that have to do with it is the contract that we have, I think it's with Alaska Waste, which sunsets in 2032. And I think that has presented a real problem. To me, it doesn't. And I think there are definitely workarounds for that, because the sooner we get out of that contract per se and deal with our own comprehensive solid waste management, I think it would be great. But you can't talk about EVs, electrical vehicles, unless you talk about how to dispose of them. And I still have that question. How do you dispose of the electric vehicles where the batteries have totally outrun their useful life? And I don't know how the city is going to do it, and I don't know what the sustainability plans are. I think that education is very important. And I think that the Sustainability Commission needs to talk about how lithium and cobalt are mined, how it is processed. Do you know how much water it takes to process these things? Do you know who has the most of these rare earth materials, and how various EPA and so forth is actually undermining the United States' ability to do their own mining? But here is something that I find interesting. Hydro doesn't come from nowhere. You have to pour concrete in order to have a dam. 8% of the world's CO2 comes from the reaction in concrete formation. All of the turbines, every part, everything has to be created, mined, and shipped here. These are not from nothing. It's like all of a sudden we have this a magic genie, which is giving us electricity. If you want to educate, teach people how these types of technologies are fully dependent on fossil fuels. The other thing is under duties and responsibilities. One of the big questions I have is in dealing with all of these things, 1 through 7, actually. I want to know how this relates to tourism. How is tourism with 650,000 people and all the people running around in buses and trucks, and how does that a fossil fuel reduction? How is that responsible use of natural resources? How does that affect the supply chain of solid waste management of 650,000 people? I'd like to hear those questions in sustainability. I don't even think they have any numbers, meaning the city has any numbers as to what the heck the tourists are bringing here in relation to sustainability. Thank you.
Anyone else on the Sustainability Commission's goals for 24-25? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the Assembly for deliberation. I just want to start by saying I'm glad to see the work on solid waste continue. That's been kind of a high yield area for me and something that I've pushed for a while. I think not only can we see efficiencies in reducing what comes in, but then managing it better when we do have to ship it out of here. So I'm excited to see that continue. I want to say thank you to Sustainability Commission because I find it to be a very high functioning commission. They're putting a lot of work and their own time into this. So we're lucky to have created them and have members who want to contribute to the goals on such a high level. I am reassured after the presentation that the Sustainability Commission knows its goals and they understand the strengths and weaknesses of each of those. They seemed very solid on them. And so that gives me assurance going forward that they know the direction that they want to head. And then finally, a word was used several times that I think is ultimately important to the success of any of our boards, commissions, and committees, and that is collaborate with city staff. Our boards, commissions, committees can ask, but if they don't have a good working relationship with staff, the mission is kind of failed and flawed from the very beginning, because you do need that collaboration with the people who are paid to do it on a daily basis in order for these volunteer boards, commissions, and committees to work. So I'm glad that they have a high level of collaboration and a high functioning relationship with city staff. So I will be approving this work plan. I think we kind of knew going into it last year that it would be more than a single year goal, but it sounds like they've made some good work forward and will continue to have some large tasks in front of them as they go forward. So, Kevin.
Thank you, Stephen. Mr. Mayor, I will also be approving this, and you kind of hit the nail on the head. These goals are multi-year. We did talk about that last year, and it takes time. These are big projects, so I think we should continue doing it. And first little bit, I think the commission was learning how to operate and kind of getting their legs, and they've been doing a great job. But yeah, these are good goals, but they take a couple of years, so I'll be supporting them.
Anything further, JJ?
Excellent job on ETIP. Really excellent job. And I hope to see great things come out of that collaboration with the federal entities too.
Well, I was glad to see that you at least consumed some of the elephant. So that's a great thing. I think I will also be supporting this. I think you guys are on a great track. I think the EV conversation is a good one to have going forward. There certainly are increasing options, not necessarily all here just in our country, unfortunately, but there's a lot of good ideas out there, and I look forward to seeing that because, yeah, I mean, we do have good hydropower, so.
Anything else? Jess?
Yes, on the motion to approve the Sustainability Commission 2024 and 2025 goals and work plan, Mr. Saline,
Yes.
Mayor Eisenbeis,
Yes.
Mr. Christensen,
Yes.
Ms. Carlson,
Yes.
Mr. Pike,
Yes.
Mr. Mosher.
Yes.
Motion passes 6-0 on item G.
Thank you. That brings us to item H, which is a discussion direction on the development of an RFP for management of the Sitka Performing Arts Center. Ron, I understand Amy Ainsley and Kevin Knox are here to present on this one.
That is correct.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor and Assembly members. Amy Ainsley, Planning and Community Development Director, and I'm also joined by Kevin Knox, our Parks and Recreation Coordinator.
Good evening.
So for a little bit of background, for those who may not be familiar with the current management structure of the Performing Arts Center, or PAC, in 2019, the city and Borough of Sitka, the Sitka School District, and Alaska Arts Southeast entered into a cooperative agreement to manage the facility. And so what that cooperative agreement means is that each party kind of made contributions, whether those be cash or in kind, to provide sort of a joint management service for the facility. So in short, the contributions from each of those organizations, the city provided payment for utilities, that's electricity, water, sewer, and garbage, and parking lot snow removal. The school district provided heating, janitorial supplies, up to $5,000 per year, insurance coverage, building maintenance, and other snow removal. And Alaska Arts Southeast managed the facility in terms of event booking and marketing, event management, technical management, and custodial services. So Alaska Arts Southeast was not directly paid under this contract, but they did retain the revenue generated from PAC rentals. Their fees, they were not charged for usage of that facility, and also received priority use for the facility while the Fine Arts Camp was in session. The Sitka School District is not charged fees for use of the facility. That was originally a one-year term with 4 annual extensions. So we are currently in the last extension year, which will expire on June 30th of this year. All 3 parties came together to start discussing a potentially new agreement moving forward, and Alaska Arts Southeast notified city staff and the Sitka School District that they would require a cash payment to continue management of the Performing Arts Center, and that request at the time was $125,000. At that time, city staff determined, this is an unbudgeted item that needs to be a part of the budget or otherwise approved by the assembly, and then also needs to follow our procurement rules as well. We can't, direct that payment without a competitive process. And so that's why this item is in front of you tonight, to discuss kind of what the process for that might look like going forward and kind of what options we have. Our primary recommendation is that we issue a request for proposals to seek all potential interest, including hopefully from Alaska Arts Southeast, for management of the facility. But we would need the assembly's direction on a couple of things. Well, first and foremost, if we should move forward with at least seeking, all interest in managing the facility. But more detailed is that we need some direction on whether or not that RFP should be based on the continuance of a cooperative model where we continue to provide at least the same level of support for the facility that we currently do, or if that would be different. And whether or not there should be any particular provisions as a part of the management that we would like to potentially see changed from the current contract as well. And we also wanted to see if the assembly would like us to, in parallel, provide an estimate for in-house management of that facility. So the way that this is moving forward, we would move forward pretty quickly with issuing an RFP with the intent of bringing that forward in terms of the best value proposal that comes from that for consideration in the FY25 budget. And that would be brought, if the assembly is interested in that, again, that parallel analysis of in-house management for the assembly to consider whether or not to include either contracted management, again, whether we do that through this kind of cooperative model or in-house management. I will pause there for any questions.
Questions for Amy or Kevin?
So have you talked to the school district if they're still interested in being cooperative on this?
Yes, they are. In our original meeting with Alaska Arts Southeast Fine Arts Camp and in the city, the school district was a part of that meeting. They still see the facility as a district facility, so that kind of triad would still exist.
So in the RFP the school district would still remain, I mean, as part of this conversation, that would remain a partner in this?
Yes.
Contributing financially to this?
Correct. If you want us to move forward with an RFP that's based on the existing cooperative model.
Tori?
Yeah, so I have a question when you talk about the idea of having the city run it directly. I'm not going to hold you to anything necessarily, but do you see any scenario where it would cost less than $125,000?
I'm gonna ballpark and say probably not.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Yeah, we imagine that it would largely be informational for the assembly to have that information. We just want to give you as much background and information as possible to move forward about, kind of determining what the best option for management of the facility is. But yeah, we don't expect that it would be less than 125,000.
Yeah. I don't have a question, just a comment. Yeah, I thought a lot about this, and I understand we have to, to follow procurement policy, especially if there's a financial aspect of it. But yeah, I agree. I don't think we're going to find, plus the expertise that these folks have. Basically, what I feel like we should do is try to do it, continue the cooperative model. Of course, we have to go out to RFP and fund that request, because I think they're doing us a service and adds huge value. And that's why I would want to make sure that the RFP would not just be about money or anything like that. It would be about making sure that the applicant who succeeds brings the value that we want from that. So yeah, I think it's working. So why change it? I understand though about the financial aspect, and that changes. But inflation's been going up, and the costs of doing anything now are going up. So I still think at $125,000, they're doing us a service.
On that note, I was wondering if we could hear from Alaska Arts Southeast. I see their hair, and if they have any, I mean, they've been running it for essentially since it started. So I'd love to hear their take on this.
Yeah, let me make sure that Tim's questions are answered by our presenters, and then we'll ask if they're willing to come up.
Yeah, actually, I was just going to comment as well. I was at the school board meetings and other meetings when this triad basically came together. And the school district was looking to get rid of it because it costs the school district about $250,000 a year. And so in one of their budget crunches, they were ready to hand it off to the city, and the city didn't have the money at the time. The assembly didn't want to take on that responsibility. And so that's how we all came together. And I would say, Arts Southeast stepped up to help us make sure that this three-piece puzzle would actually function. Because I don't believe that facility is ever going to make money to pay for itself. I mean, it's a valuable resource in our community, but it's not a moneymaker. And so, the question has always been who ends up with it and who ends up paying for it. And I think, at this point in time, I think Arts Southeast has been taking a little bit of a beating on this particular thing in this deal, because, we're all still contributing, but this is a very expensive facility to run, and it's only going to get more so. Especially as it's difficult to find technical staff. So, you have to pay people what they're worth. So I agree. I think, I remember when this first came up, talking to John, I say, be real careful. We don't want to necessarily just, destroy this particular partnership, because without this, we will be responsible for this thing. And it's not going to be $250,000. It'll be more than that. So.
JJ?
Can I have a little bit more background? When was the PAC completed? Because I think it was before July of 2019.
Yes.
Yes.
I want to say it was in
2006,
2009.
or 9.
Okay.
You're right.
So for 10 years, what was the management structure like?
It was pretty much wholly operated by the school district.
Okay.
I think the music teacher took on
Yeah.
a lot of those responsibilities in addition to their
Mhm.
teaching position.
They've got a great music teacher up there, so.
Anything else for Amy or Kevin while we have them in front of us? Great, thank you.
Yeah, oh, sorry,
yes,
just one,
please.
just one last thought that I just want to emphasize as well. I think that the comments made by Assembly members are really well taken in terms of the value of our existing partnership through the cooperative model. And just want to be clear that our, bringing this item forward is, a reflection of us wanting to follow the procurement process, wanting to follow the budget process, and to give, if there are any other organizations that are qualified and want to bid, we give them that fair opportunity as we're required to do. But it is a very specialized facility. It takes specialized skills to be able to run it. And, if Alaska Arts Southeast is the successful proposal on that, city staff is going to be excited to continue working with them as well.
And as we create the new cooperative agreement too, we'll be taking in a lot of considerations with how the maintenance of this facility may be changing here into the future. And then how, each of the entities interacts with all of that too.
Thank you. As our discussion progresses, we may have some further questions for you. Roger, I'm sure you kind of thought you would be called up. If you're willing, Tor would have some questions for you. Thank you. Please. Tor, please go ahead.
I just wanted to give them a chance to give their take on this process and how they see it going forward.
I'm Roger Schmidt, Executive Director of the Alaska Arts Southeast, known as Sitka Fine Arts Camp. And
I'm Drew Sherman. I'm the Business Director of the Fine Arts Camp.
And we can just give you a little history. I think that the building was completed in 2008, and we have been managing it now for the 16 years. Originally, the school district looked at, again, creating a partnership with our organization because of basically two things. One is cost and expertise. So the school district realized that we would be able to manage it for a fraction of what the school district would be able to run it with. And then the also realized that our business is in the arts, and that includes theater management. So our organization had a contract with the school district of a little over 100,000. And in Tim, you remember better than me, but exactly what you were saying is that the school district was no longer able to pay that amount. And our board of directors felt really strongly that our mission is to provide high quality arts education to Sitka kids, Alaska kids. And so that was right in our mission, and that it was our duty at the time to continue the work. We have done that now for a number of years. It costs us, and Drew can talk more about the numbers, but it costs us quite a bit of money to run the PAC, although we retain revenue from revenue generated. It's primarily a school building. And so over 50 days a year are used by the school district, and our primary client is the school district. Our primary mission is to serve children. Our primary client is to serve the school district. So not only is it virtually impossible to make money off of shows and other organizations that are serving the community through renting the facility, it's also not it's never been the main objective of the building. The main objective is to serve our school kids through the music programs, theater programs, assemblies, so forth and so on. And so we've been providing that service. We're coming to the assembly because at this point we're asking that the assembly, the city, I think we ran through all a big hard patch financially in Sitka, and I think we were hoping that this was a stopgap and not the future of our organization into perpetuity to run it at cost. It is a public facility and it's serving primarily kids. That's a little bit about the history. Again, it's 16 years and I don't remember what year it was when yeah.
It was 2018 when we basically took it on for no cost to the school. And to give some context on the numbers of it, in fiscal year 2023, we brought in we spent $230,000 to run the PAC, and the revenue from rentals and all our ticket sales for all the shows that we put on was around $80,000. So it's about a $150,000 gap. That kind of explains why we want to kind of break even and get these funds to continue to support and update the facility. There's lots of different efficiencies that we can gain with new technology in theater that have come about since it was created. So doing some of those would be able to be done if we did get funding for it instead of having to subsidize just running shows and running school events.
JJ?
Tell me a little bit more about scheduling. So now we have a Parks and Rec department with the city. And if we continue with this cooperative agreement, is there space in the schedule to do some kind of Parks and Rec programming at the back?
We currently have a tech club, which is students that come in and learn about the tech industry. And then we have after-school programs that use the PAC as well. But we would definitely be open to talking about scheduling and additional activities.
And that could get written into the agreement and not be like a rental fee?
I believe so, yes.
Any other questions?
Well, I guess,
for
so I guess I would say, so if you were, I think, putting forward an RFP, which would at least make sure that both sides know what the rules are, I mean, what the ground rules are. Would you be thinking like a 5-year contract, agreement or something like that, or with renewals, or what were you thinking?
Yeah, that would be our preference. I think as an organization, another reason why we stepped in 2018 is we were spending an inordinate amount of time as staff on, frankly, put the politics of the Performing Arts Center. And I think it's really time consuming for all bodies to keep coming back. And so looking for a longer term contract that provides stability for the city, the school district, and our organization is in our interest.
Just to be clear, you have no problem putting it in an RFP?
None.
Okay.
No. Yeah, I think that's the way it should be done.
anything else for Roger and Drew while they're up here? Appreciate it. If we need you, we'll call on you again.
Thanks so much.
So a couple things for me tonight, and then a couple decision points that I think we need to kind of hash out. It sounds as if the entire assembly at this point is supportive of the RFP, just to get the procurement policy out of the way. Just if there's anything that should be included in the RFP, and how the assembly kind of wants that structured. From what I've been hearing, I understand that the assembly likes the model, the cooperative model that is there now. I just want to be very careful that we don't write this as if we're sole sourcing this, that we are writing this for a lot of entities that could apply, but based on a model that we've seen work right now. So I want to be very careful that we're not directing this so tightly that it essentially sole sources this contract. I understand the in-house versus managed. I think it would cost quite a bit more to do this in-house. I'm not necessarily in favor of that right now, but a couple things that I do think we need to talk about as we go further is the utility costs. Right now, the city pays that. I don't know if we want to include that in the RFP. We would essentially pay it that way as well. It's not that we're going to eliminate that cost, but I want to find the most appropriate way to include those utility costs. And then I believe the assembly also needs to take a look at long-term maintenance of the facility and how that's going to play out. If we're starting to issue 5-year contracts with 5-year renewals, things are going to break in that time frame, and we need to very clearly indicate whose building it is and who's responsible for what type of maintenance issues. So just a couple things that I have as we move forward, and some questions that I think need to still be addressed for staff. Ultimately, this RFP would come back for our approval. So the guidelines that we give tonight will definitely come back in an RFP for us to approve. Tim? Tor?
Yeah, as I say, I've thought about this a little bit. I mean, as far as the utilities are concerned, if I don't know if it's cheaper for the city to just pay it or to pay and then have it come back. It strikes me that's probably more paperwork than the city just paying it, because we're going to pay it either way. Because if we say, no, you're responsible for utilities, that's going to have to be in the RFP. And so there's all, whereas this way it's just done. And I think it would actually wind up saving us money because I'm not sure how they would write their RFP, but unless they just say, we'll send you the bill every month as part of the RFP, they're going to have to estimate what it is, and they're going to have to estimate high so that they have it covered, whereas we would pay the actual amount. And so, I think it probably behooves us to continue something along we have now. It's probably cheaper, although again, when they respond to it, they can do it that way, however they want. And as at the end of the day, as far as things like big maintenance, like right now, the school district handles the maintenance and we're taking over that anyway. So is there any remember that this is our asset, and whether or not you agreed with getting it in the first place or you like having it, we got it. And we need to take care of it. And I would be very hesitant to put maintenance off on a third party, because in the best interest, they probably are not going to be as diligent as we are. And we need to protect our assets. It's the same reason why we want to take over the school district maintenance, because those are our assets and we need to make sure that they're taken care of. It's the same reason. And so, again, I would be hesitant to try and fold in major maintenance. I mean, we're not talking changing light bulbs here, although there maybe we are because of how high they are. But point being is that we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. We don't want to cost ourselves money down the line. So that's.
Jim? Yeah, I think there's a couple other pieces to this puzzle that we still need to talk about too. One is the school district. So, I think we're moving forward with the assumption the school district wants to contribute in the same way or the same amount that they are. But I mean, the school district's in dire financial shape right now, and not, they always are at this time of year, but this is more real than usual. And we'll talk a little bit about that later. But so I think we need to be real sure that the school district's on board for their portion of whatever we think this is going to be as this RFP goes out. And then, I think there's maintenance of the building, keeping it as it is, and then there's upgrades to the building. So I think we need to talk. I think as this RFP goes forward, it'll be worth looking at that, because the technology in there is from 2008. And the technology has changed, and some of those parts are no longer available. You can kind of see where I'm going with this. Like when we redid this building, like there was a whole change of all the upgrade of electronics and everything else like that. So I think, it's about that time for that building to need something similar to that. So I would be interested in looking at that as part of our RFP as well. So like, what does that look like? And yeah, I think assuming that the budget passes and we take over school maintenance, it will become the maintenance that's being done by the school will be done by that group. It is our responsibility. So I think that I don't want to see that particular aspect of it change. But I think school district is a big piece of this one that we need to lock down where they're at on it before we're ready to go forward.
JJ?
To follow off of Tim, yeah, there's a big difference between maintenance, repairs, and improvements. And this kind of covers the word maintenance. And that 15 years, it's like, a roof is 30 years, building lifespan is 50, IT tech stuff is 10, 15 at max. And we're at that point, as they've stated. And there's a lot more in these details of expenses and this existing bullet points here. I mean, it's a very nice 2-page agreement, but there's quite a few more bullet points to be considered, and repairs, improvements, and upgrades needs to be some of them.
So, sorry, so do you guys mean you want them to take over in the RFP, the leasee or whoever, to be doing maintenance? Because, okay, because I was getting confused because I don't think that's their area of expertise, but you want it clear is what you're saying. You want it very clear who's doing it. And if it's our building, it's most likely going to be us. So that is clearly noted. And I do agree with you guys. We need to be clear on this, that the building is the people, it's city and borough of Sitka, but Sitka's the people voted for it and are paying for it with their additional property tax. So it's the city's. And to your point, Stephen, I do agree that we don't want to have it so narrow that we're basically sole sourcing it. We want to be fair. I just want to make sure it's fair for the people who might apply, because I don't see anybody else doing it, and we want. I would like to continue this cooperative agreement as close to what we're doing now as possible. And I do your point, Tim, about the school district being in dire straits. They really are. It's been like years where it seemed like it, and then they always were able to come out of it. They're in a real tough spot right now. So we do need to find out about that piece. But as far as I'm concerned, I think I made my point, my intentions known. And the longer term thing, it's funny that you say that, because like having a 1-year agreement with 1-year extensions, it just doesn't seem like it makes a lot of sense. So I would prefer a longer term. But the overall thing is, yes, we in this RFP and ensuing agreement, we need to be very clear about who's responsible for what. So there's no ambiguity. And that always helps with keeping things clear and fully functioning in the best way possible. That's it for now.
Any other thoughts to include in a RFP that will come out? Ron, anything else you need from this assembly in order to go back and prepare an RFP to present to us?
No, I would extend it to Amy and Kevin.
So I just want to recap. I'm hearing broad agreement. We do want to issue the RFP. We want to base it on the continued cooperative model. We do want to include the current contributions that the city makes. We have already kind of had these conversations with the Sitka School District, but we will certainly confirm those in terms of what their interest is, in terms of their contribution as we prepare the RFP, and that we would like for the RFP to make clear the differentiation between what I'll call kind of daily or minor maintenance and major maintenance or upgrades to the facility, and make sure that that's clear in the RFP about what those responsibilities would be.
I think that summarizes it. Anybody disagree with that?
No, just to clarify too, the funding, the cash funding part should be part of it as well.
Yes, yeah, that's the proposal that the respondents would have. That'd be the blank that they get to fill in.
I do have a question, sorry. So any revenues generated, where's that in this RFP? So same as is, whoever's the winner of the bid would keep the revenues.
Again, it would, yeah, or it would come back as part of the proposal from the respondent.
Okay.
What they would want to do with any revenues.
In the past, the assembly found that to be a very strong point, because then winning bidder is going to advertise more, put it out there more, and hopefully generate more revenue for themselves and then utilize that building more.
And I'll just point out too that around the questions around the maintenance, it's really important to CBS staff and the administrator that the major maintenance and then some of the technical upgrades will all be part of our asset management frameworks. So these will all be tracked and they will all be recorded as when there are needs that arise and prioritized and then dealt with within that framework. So.
Yes, I would agree. I think the first 15 years of building operation are pretty easy. And I think that after 15 years is about when it starts to break. And so that's why it was such a large concern to me. We may not have anything in the first 5, but we may after that. So I think it's a large point that I definitely want worked out as we go forward here.
Sorry. And we had not planned to bring the draft RFP back to the assembly. We felt that we got adequate direction from you to move forward with it. However, if you would like to see a draft of it, we can bring that back for you at the next meeting.
Yes, I'm not going to approve anything I don't actually see in front of me.
Understood.
Thank you.
One little addition, did the routine user fees will be waived portion, did that get picked up for the CBS agrees to? Okay, thank you.
Yeah, if this was a smaller type thing, because this is kind of new ground in a way, trying to maintain, but also new in a way, I would also agree. I'd like to see the RFP.
As long as we're cognizant of the fact that we are very lucky that there's an organization in town willing to do this. I realize we don't want to sole source, but I don't think we realize how lucky we are. I mean, the type of expertise it takes to run a facility like that doesn't grow on trees. In fact, it's very hard to get nationwide. And I always just call it the Fine Arts Camp, even though I know it's Alaska Southeast, is home growing it. I mean, the tech group, the other things, I mean, they're providing real careers for Sitkin kids out there. And in the arts and in running places like this. And so we get to make this facility have another, as an incubator, as a jobs incubator. And, you know, they're, you know, kind of like, you know, we're lucky to have a number of organizations like that. Every time I hear Brian Mann on the radio, knowing that he got his start here in Sitka, you know, so it's, like I say, I think we want to be careful about task loading them there. So
I would tend to, I agree 100%. I think we're very lucky to have them, all those folks, and the volunteer work that they do. It's definitely out of love of community. And we're lucky to have them.
Anything further on the RFP? And Amy, you have everything you need? Ron, you have everything you need?
Yep, good to go.
Great. We do only have a couple more items, but it is well past the hour, so we'll go ahead and take a brief recess, and please be seated when you're ready. All right, the assembly is seated, so we'll jump back into our last item tonight, which is a discussion direction decision on commercial passenger vessel tax fund balance. Ron and Melissa, I understand you have some information for us about this one.
Yeah, let me, I'll try to do an intro here, and Melissa, you can correct me wherever I mess up. This item on tonight's agenda is follow-up action to ordinance 2008-29 and 2023-17, addressing the use of passenger vessel excise tax. Tonight, we're seeking specifically discussion and direction from this body for the use of the available balance. We have three options. One is to pursue special projects as assigned by the assembly. The other option here would be to retain funding balance for future use. And then the third option here would be to initiate a call for public proposals for use of the funds. So with that, I'll pass it off to Melissa.
Ron nailed it.
Thank you.
Well, I was worried because as soon as he said, correct me if I'm wrong, you stood up and started to walk this way. So great. So as you've heard from Ron, a couple discussion points for us tonight. Do we want to do any of those, or do we want to let the fund balance sit? So I don't know if anybody has thoughts on this to get it started, or Kevin?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Yeah, it's an interesting conversation, and it's interesting and a positive thing to have the option to either spend or save or both. And that's kind of where I feel is, I know that this has to be in spending in line with the tourist industry and helping tourists. We got to find those things, of course, after expenses by the city are reimbursed. I would be okay with saving it unless maybe in the matrix of assets that are just like, having to do with tourism, something, if there's any assets that we have that the uses of this funds could be justified, it would be nice to see if there are any on the list, if there's anything that, oh, well, if we save a little bit more, we'll be able to pay for that or partial pay for that. It would be nice to know that information, just something to think about. And so I don't want to just spend money just to spend it. If we have some savings to spend it, like say another year, whatever, that would be great too. So I guess for me, it's more open-ended, like let's get a little more information on what kind of needs we might have. And the call for public proposals, I think that could work, but more of like, keep it open-ended, like we want some information, what do you think we should do? But also keep it like, let people know we may choose to hold off if we have a big project or big asset or something that we could use. So I hope I was maybe clear as mud.
I would say keep it in reserves. It will get spent. Don't worry. And unappropriate things. But I like the idea of having some money on hand so that if something comes up, we have it. If let's say, I don't know, especially something in tourism infrastructure, like, I don't know if this is likely, but we get a sinkhole right in front of the Centennial Building where the buses park. Well, we could use it for that because that's where the buses park. I don't think that's likely, but I mean, something along those lines. Someday we'll actually do the Lincoln Street rebuild. And I know we've put some of that towards that already. And I think that is legitimate especially since we're blocking it off. And a project like that could burn 1.6 million in an afternoon, So I like the idea of keeping it in our back pocket for now. And I say, I don't have any doubt in my mind that we'll have things come up that are appropriate for that will come forward, unless we have a specific project in mind but if we put it out for proposals, I think that's going to, number one, bring in all kinds of things that we can't spend it and burn it up, that we won't have it when we need it. And it's better. It's always nice to have some in reserve.
Tim?
Yeah, I'm largely in favor of the same thing, saving the money for a rainy day, but I'd like to explore the option of using some of this funding to more balance out what Visit Sitka is actually doing, so that we can save some more of the bed tax for what they're, kind of split the two halves apart, since this is specific to the cruise ship tourists more than it is to the visitors who stay overnight. So, I would be interested in exploring a percentage of whatever Visit Sitka is asking for coming from this fund, in addition to saving the remainder.
JJ?
I think $1 million or so could be saved in reserve for, that rainy day needs or potentially sunny day needs as opposite us. Some things worth noting, TBMP program that may be coming out of suggestions from the task force, the tourism task force. That's maybe $15,000, $20,000 annually could come from this fund. The tourism impact end of season study annually, depending on what kind of program we want. There's a $20,000 option and there's a $40,000 option, give or take. Along with what Tim said, like looking at Visit Sitka, that contract on what duties can be cruise industry related, and that potential of that tourism manager role in our planning and community development department. Can some of that salary be from CPV? Those were what came to mind, those 4 things, as potentially special projects, which could eat up 100,000 annually, and then the rest be saved, or say 100,000 could go to public proposals and just see what the community thinks. Creativity is out there. If we think outside the blocks, we may find some really great strategies people may have that could be within the parameters of how this money is spent. But yes, saving the majority of it for a Lincoln Street or a Cat Leanne or something like that is a great idea. But there are some smaller things that also I would entertain us discussing.
I agree with everything that's been said so far. I initially want to save it, but I think there could be some great ideas out in our community about how we could utilize some of this money to not only improve the visitor experience, but improve our lives while the visitors are experiencing our town. I am a little concerned on how we would educate everyone about the allowable usages, because I think we would have to turn down a lot of projects that would come. And people may not understand why. And I say that because even the people at this table, including myself, don't fully understand at times what this money can be used for. So if we don't, and then we have to try and educate everyone, it can be a daunting task. And I just don't want someone to put forward a project that they believe to be the best project, and it's not allowed, and then their feelings are hurt because their project didn't get selected. Now, that may be a smaller thing in the scope of it, but I think it is a potential consequence of. I think JJ was on the money with a couple of those ideas. Personally, I'd like to see them brought back in an ordinance in a supplemental appropriation form. So working with a couple people to find some of those would be great. So if we put it in savings right now, we keep it status quo, we can always bring those projects forward as an assembly. That doesn't need to happen just tonight. So yeah, I'm interested in hearing what our community would want this money spent on. I think there's a couple pitfalls we'd have to work through, obviously, but ultimately I'll kind of revert back to putting it away and saving it for the unforeseen. I don't know, does this fund balance help electrify cruise ships? Does it, who knows what may be coming around the corner? So I'm a little more strongly leaning toward just keeping it in the account as it is right now. Scott?
I'm just wondering on the spending of the funds, like with the Episcopalian Church and the Orthodox Church being so much part of people's vista when they come through Sitka, if, you know, the Orthodox Church is, you know, washing out and Episcopalian Church is hurting, and if it would just be a shutdown deal because it's a religious thing, or if it does enhance the Love Boat people and we could steer money to fix our churches or, you know, those historic churches.
Possibly just a historical perspective. The municipality at one point tried to chip in on the painting project for St. Michael's because it is such a visible building within the town. And we were threatened by several groups with lawsuits if we contributed tax dollars towards that. So just a history.
To kind of expand on what JJ was saying, you know, earlier tonight, the strikes me as a natural that the printing of these things would be a perfect spot because those are used, I suspect, 90-something% by cruise ship passengers. So paying for the printing of these, which was a pretty big hunk of their budget, and that it, you know, would be, I think, completely defensible. And I don't know if we could do that when we talk about their budget or we direct city staff to look at doing that, whether or not it has to be a formal, because it's something we're already doing. But if we're looking for ways to fund them with a different, you know, when they're not performing their initial primary mission, that's a simple one that is 100% defensible.
Kevin?
So that kind of goes into a theme, and I think you mentioned something about it. There's been discussion this evening on different agenda items, which I agree with. I think pretty much most of them. I'm not sure about one, but about trying to find a more accurate source for funding certain things in town, and like say a tourism director, or, you know, like Tor was mentioning that the printing. Is that something we could direct John to look into investigating those kind of things, or anything we have to do, or just let Ron know and he can ask John, tell John about it. He can bring an agenda item at some point.
And I'm just trying to think how it fits into this one. Like, I think so, but I think a more solid way is if a couple assembly members got together with exactly what they were looking for and then had John start to look at an ordinance through that. I think that's a little bit more solid approach.
Okay, because I'm not sure, like, definitively what I think about all these, but I think that some of these things are worth looking into, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of the same thing, like you already said it, like, we're not really sure, right? Like, can we do this? So I think it is worth, you know, it's sort of like our concern with the community, like, let's not have great ideas that won't work, you know, or that won't fit under this. So let's find out what's possible before we, you know, go too far down any one of these roads here, so.
To my recollection, I think that was built into the review process. I looked into this more because it's one of the directives for the task force. And by us talking about this tonight, it gets into the fiscal year planning for CBS, but then also in kind of what other communities in Southeast do for CPV process of, you know, potentially going to the main industry group that would sue and giving the thumbs up that, you know, that seems like a decent project. And that happens towards October, November, December of the year. So this, us deciding tonight, if any chunk of money does go to public proposal, gives that review cycle the time needed.
Which you are correct. We do approach industry representatives about, which I still don't like that process. I still think it's very weird. It's like, hey, will you sue me if I do this? It's weird. Anything else on this discussion direction item tonight? Awesome. I think a couple assembly members probably have some ideas to bring back to the administrator for some further review and some further work on. So excited to see those come forward because I think some good ideas were generated tonight. That would bring us to persons to be heard this evening. This is public participation for any item on or off tonight's agenda, not to exceed 3 minutes.
Good evening. My name is Richard Ween. This is Persons to be Heard, and welcome. What Mr. Saline had mentioned, and that is giving funds for the church, especially not to discriminate, but especially to the iconic St. Michael's, was actually money from the general fund. It was not from the cruise passenger taxing. If in the packet they had a listing of like 3 basic notions of what you could spend it on, they are so highly restrictive as to be ridiculous and not functional. And I think that if that is solely based in the code needs to be changed by period. I think that St. Michael's is iconic. If it did not exist, the hole on Lincoln Street would be enormous. And I think that anything people could do would be to assist it would be great. And I think it should be revisited. I remember because I was sitting on the assembly at that time when money was requested and all the brouhaha about constitutionality. I did my own research. There are any number of cases. The key here is not using it for religious education when you give money. Otherwise, there are case law, which allows you to give money to religious institutions for other things. And I think that if it comes back in the relation to the general fund again, I'm sorry, you say, go ahead, sue me, because I think that the law is on our side. We may have weak advice from the attorneys, but there's a difference between weakness, meaning they're afraid, and coming across to say, hey, this is something reasonable. Sitka needs St. Michael's, and any way we can assist is a good thing. And that also, the argument also applies to St. Peter's. So bottom line is the road to Kathleen, as you know, is defunct. But then again, according to the article in the newspaper, if we only had $20 million more, we could make it work. Not. This is the kind of thinking that goes on in the legislature, which is absolutely ridiculous. A couple of things. Archie Young, who was the boys coach at Mount Edgecombe, is retiring after 25 years. He's a great guy. He dedicated his life to those kids and did a wonderful job. So Archie Young, thank you very much. And another interesting side note is our very own Ron Vinson's son, who's in 4th grade, came in 2nd in the state spelling bee. He beat out an 8th grader. So there.
Good evening. My name is Austin Cranford. I just wanted to touch on 2 points. One, I wanted to thank the airport manager for his clarification on ordinance 24-06. And I wanted to thank the mayor for mentioning that he is going to look into possibly rewording the ordinance so that it does not apply to citizens that are renting cars through Turo. So I look forward to seeing that in front of the assembly soon. I did want to mention something regarding the commercial passenger vessel exercise tax fund. I know the assembly did not make a decision if they didn't make a public proposal, and I don't know if this would even be something that would be allowed within the ordinances, as I've not been able to read them. But there's been talk within the community about possibly funding basically a cruise ship power station. The cruise ships currently don't hook into our electrical grid. They run off of their generators and turbines on board when they're in port. And this actually does a couple of things. One, it helps the Sustainability Commission. They're not running their engines while they're in port. They're hooked up to shore power. it helps us with funding because we're charging electrical taxes to the cruise line companies or to the McGraws, whoever would be responsible for that. And those funds aren't restricted like the commercial passenger vessel exercise tax fund would be. And as long as we can use it, it's like, okay, well, now we can double dip. We still get the head tax from the commercial cruise lines, but we also get the taxes and income from the shoreline power. So I would like to see if the assembly could look into possibly doing something like that. Thank you.
Anyone else for persons to be heard this evening? Seeing none, that'll bring us to reports. Just a couple things for me tonight. First thing, myself and the administrator and our government affairs director will be on a trip to DC to present our legislative priorities to congressional leaders and staff. We'll be gone April 8th through the 12th. Perfect timing for myself because that is during a regularly scheduled assembly meeting. So congrats, Kevin, you drew that straw again. Thank you for filling in for me. And then just wanted to remind the assembly coming up on the 16th is our administrator and our attorney reviews, a pretty important process that we go through annually. So make sure that that's on your radar and that you're doing your homework for that one coming up here pretty soon. That's all I have. Ron, as acting administrator, do you have a report this evening?
I do not. Thank you.
Brian, do you have a report this evening?
Just to say that I will be in person at the regular meeting of April 9th, and also will be in the office for 2 days on the 8th and 9th, and available for in-person meetings if anyone needs to speak to me at that time. So otherwise, I continue to work remotely and can be contacted through the legal department or on my cell phone. Thank you.
Great, thank you. I'd say look forward to seeing you. However, I don't think our schedules are going to overlap this time. Any liaison representatives? Tor.
So we had an investment committee meeting, first one in many moons. And it's actually interesting how well it's been doing. It's conservatively managed, but we kind of came out of the last few years pretty significantly better than the average, better than the mean, because what a lot of the markets did. The way we're diversified, they actually had managed to see the interest rates coming up to a certain extent, and the way they're allowed to move money around a little bit. We came out pretty good. They are recommending, which you may see at some point in the future, a very almost esoteric change that will require a code change in the way they manage bond investments. Right now, we're limited to fairly short-term investments, and they're suggesting that I think from instead of a 5-year limit to a 10-year limit or something, which would overall, it looked like it very slightly increases our risk. I mean, just a couple of percentage points in the worst case scenarios, and somewhat slightly increases our output, our potential output. It's pretty esoteric, honestly, but the main point is that it is at this point making about 2.5% over inflation, which is nice. And so, you don't want to look at short-term stuff, but so far this year it's doing very well. But I suspect at the end of the year, we're going to be right back at our normal, and probably at about 6%. But it was a good meeting, and they say the meetings are very infrequent. So wait another 3 months, you'll get another report. So.
Yeah, I attended the school district work session on the budget, and this is, I think there's going to be some things that they're going to come talk to us about at some point. Right now, they've already calculated that the state's going to give them an extra $340 per student. outside the BSA. If it goes inside the BSA, then they would be interested in looking at going back to the city for this. And here's why I think this is going to be something we're going to want to consider pretty seriously. Right now, they're counting on 10 to 15 teacher cuts. So because they are somewhere between 1.2 and $1.8 million is what they need to cut out of their budget. So I think, you know, when they come back and say, hey, this, if we're lucky enough to have the state put the money inside the BSA, that they would come back and say, hey, this is something that the city could help kind of lessen some of the losses at this point in time. So there is no scenario where they're not going to cut at least 10 teachers. So, you know, I think those are the things that are coming for us as we go forward. So while the city's sitting flush and looking at hiring new people, the school district is going to be cutting people. So that's just where we're at financially. And the governor's veto of the funding bill, not great. I think to make the district whole would require a BSA increase of close to $1,000. That's not a likely scenario. There are bills wending their way through the legislature. Most of the money's outside the cap, but I don't think any of them are going to match up to what this district's going to need. So 10 to 15 teachers are going to get cut is basically what the school district is working off of at this point in time.
Scott?
We might have our avant-garde Dutch copier fired up at the library. Could have happened today.
Can I cut the ribbon on it and make the first copy?
Supposed to be worth having.
I'm gonna put my head down on it and JJ?
Tourism Task Force is winding down to their presentation, the assembly on the second meeting in April. It's the 23rd. We remind me, Jess, is it the Monday, the 8th? Or
Yes, we discussed that today, Amy and I, and it will be on the April.
so we'll have maybe 1 or 2 more meetings. So the community is invited to attend the next Tourism Task Force meeting on Monday, April 8th here at the Centennial Building.
Any other liaison reports? Jess?
I have nothing to report. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other reports this evening? Seeing none, that would bring us to adjournment. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Thank you everyone for your time this evening.